Hi, my name is Brayden Nguyen, and welcome to my Maker Portfolio. My journey began in 7th grade, where I made an air cannon for my 7th grade science class. I made it using PVC from Home Depot, a sprinkler valve from Lowe's, and some other bits and pieces that I found lying around the house. After the air cannon, I then made a small tank-treaded robot, and in the process I learned about Arduino and basics of electricity such as current draw and voltage. At first, this robot was just an Arduino Nano that sent pre-programmed left, right, forwards, and backwards signals to an H-bridge driver chip that drove two motors. But later, I added a PlayStation 2 controller receiver to the robot and then heavily reworked the code so that a human could pilot the robot instead. Later that year, I joined my local FIRST robotics team where I helped program multiple robots. In 2022 and 2023, I programmed just some lights. But in 2024, I programmed the auto-aim functionality using an object detection neural network, and in 2025, I programmed the robot's swerve drive. I also found great success as the drive coach, where I led my team to victory at an event and alliance captained multiple times. Whilst this was happening on my FRC team, I also became very interested in combat robotics and produced many different types of robots. For around 3 years or so, I constructed robots that used a horizontal spinner as a weapon. However, I never really found much success with them. I often ended up losing fights and being turned into a big pile of scraps, basically. But that's where I stumbled upon a new design philosophy where rather than using a weapon, I could just push around my opponents to gain control points. Another added benefit of choosing this approach was that I wouldn't have to spend any weight on a weapon that I wouldn't be using anyways. So, with that in mind, I produced the very aptly named two robots. Oh, and if the name wasn't clear enough, the gimmick of this robot was that you would have to fight two of them at the same time. The first iteration of the robot was extremely crude. The space inside the robot wasn't very well optimized, which led to a lot of weight being wasted, and the robot construction itself was also extremely frail. However, I iterated on this design, improving a lot of different things, such as the forks, the dimensions of the robot, even the weight distribution and the durability. And I'm currently on version 5, which will be competing later this year. Wish me luck. Before we move on, however, I've made a few custom parts for combat robotics. Firstly, I wrote my own wireless communication software in order to use an Xbox controller to control my robots instead of the traditional RC flight controllers that I use here. I use an ESP32 Xiao microcontroller as a receiver since the solution offers customizability, extra buttons, and channels that traditional flight controllers do not. I also developed a custom speed controller to address the space management issues that many robot builders faced. I realized that behind many motors there was free space that just couldn't be used, which caused inefficiencies in designs. This rear-mounted motor controller I made could fit into this unusable space and give robot builders more room to play with and build better robots. Unfortunately, during this time, a family member fell down the stairs and became paralyzed. She couldn't open her hands anymore, and the therapeutic devices prescribed by her doctors were flimsy and ineffective. So I made this device instead, which works by pulling the fingers back, forcing the user to exercise their hand, accelerating and ensuring recovery. Like my robots, this project has had multiple iterations too. The first iteration, of course, was very crude, and really did not do the job very well. However, I quickly improved the design and created a second version, which ended up being a further success. However, it was still very crude, and I still had to take measurements and recreate the hand bit by bit for every single finger. Upon learning that variables existed in CAD, however, I figured out a way to create a type of finger that was parametric, such that I could change a single number, as shown here, and all of a sudden, the computer would generate me what I needed. Anyhow, I also find myself to be quite helpful around the school using CAD. Sometimes I'm making a doorstop for some of my teachers, another day I'm making a football clamp for a part that broke, and on other days I'm making balloon weights for student council. Finally, I would like to give some honorable mentions to some of my smaller projects, such as the constant and continuous maintenance of my Ender 3 3D printer, which has taken tens of hours from my life. However, it has also taught me a lot about 3D printing technology, whilst also sharpening my technical skills. I also made a smart home system completely hosted on local hardware, because I'd prefer if Big Brother wasn't always watching me and selling my own data. Thank you for your time, and I hope to be attending your school.